Rise! Rise in revolution! Rise! Rise in revolution! Everybody, one for all! Sound off! This is the call! Rise! Like we're alive! Tonight we rise! Make a better life! Tonight we rise! 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 Rise in revolution! Rise!
Hey guys, nothing important here, and today we're doing a power scale of Optimus Prime from the Cybertron games, most specifically the Fall of Cybertron game. Of course, we're also going to be including the Rise of the Darkspark Megatron boss fight feat, as that happened in the Fall of Cybertron timeline. So please bear to keep that in mind as we go through the video. So what we're going to be doing for the video is that we're going to be going over his scaling, after that his weapons, and then after that his hacks. That's how we usually do it in the videos, and I will not change it for this one, even though it's Prime. So now, starting off with Prime, he should have at least Massive City AP, if not even Multi-City to even Mountain attack potency, because he scales off Trypticon, who is larger than the Ark, who is the same size as Metroplex, who is indeed a Cybertronian city, and that a Cybertronian city is at least 5 to 9 times larger than that of a normal city. So we're looking at probably multi-city to even like mountain levels of power being exerted by Prime. To however extent you either calc him or just put him at for his AP is completely up to you, but you can calculably get him to mountain level at highest. Now, that is for his attack potency. Another thing to add though is that his attack potency and durability are relative, as shown when he fights Megatron in the Fall of Cybertron final boss fight, where he uses his sword and shield, Megatron uses his sword and shield. They're dishing out damage to each other, they're both tanking each other's hits. So that would be enough evidence to easily prove that your weapons and your protections would scale more or less to your durability and attack potency. So please keep that in mind, that his War Axe would scale to his AP as well from War for Cybertron. Now, going over his speed though, which is more of a contentious end, at least for the Cybertron games. He scales off the aerial bots who dodge lasers from Trypticon, and that the lasers are light speed. You can argue them faster than light however you wish, because the aerial bots are faster than the lasers. You can even downplay them to massively hypersonic due to how long it takes for the orbital cannon to reach Cybertron. Although that is from the orbital cannon, that's not from Trypticon's mouth laser. So please bear to keep that in mind when you're scaling the aerial bots off Trypticon. But besides that though, the lasers should be consistently light speed due to how the Transformers verse handles lasers. It's actually been confirmed in one series. The lasers are the speed of light. So lasers should be the speed of light, which means Prime should be light speed or a little faster, scaling off the aerial bots who are also light speed or a little faster. So moving on to his weapons though, he has his Path Blaster, he has numerous heavy weapons, he even has his sword, his shield, his War Axe. He also has resistance to, say, subatomic destruction, as most of the weapons in the Cybertron games are capable of destroying you subatomically, and Prime has been shown to take multiple hits from these types of weapons, so subatomic destruction will not be very easy to deal to Prime, if any at all. Now, for kinetic damage, he does have a limited power nullification against types of kinetic weaponry, depending on how strong they are and whether or not they scale to him. So he also does have a degree of resistance, or at least a degree of power nullification, based off the type of factor. So that's another part of his arsenal due to his armor. He also has his War Axe, which is capable of emitting shockwaves. These shockwaves are somewhat weaker than the original attack, and that Prime can control the effectiveness of the shockwaves from destroying walls to even one-shotting Trepticon, who by then his weapons were basically destroyed, and he was basically just a living, breathing Godzilla in Transformers form, basically. The Prime one-shot. So all of his resistances and all of his all of his arsenals and weapons, they should all scale to him for his attack potency and durability. But of course, moving on to another factor though, his intelligence. As for intelligence, Prime in the Cybertron games led the Autobots in war against Megatron for over millions of years. So this would mean that Prime would have experience along with his age, and also he would have sharp battlefield intelligence. He also has access to Metroplex, who can fire artillery from many, many kilometers away. To what extent you believe the kilometer range is completely up to you, but he also does have access to Metroplex, who can fire artillery, as well as nuclear apparatuses. So he also does have access to Metroplex, as something he consistently uses on the battlefield. That's one extension of his intelligence. Another extension of his intelligence was in the battle against Megatron before he got killed by Metroplex. Because as soon as he figured out that Metroplex was an Autobot, him and Metroplex immediately synced up and were basically partners along in the battle and decimated the entire warfield. And that Prime already knew how to destroy the warp cannons and immediately knew when Metroplex was awake when he revealed himself to Prime. So that's another extension of his battlefield intelligence, and of course another extension, or at least another example of his battlefield intelligence, would actually stem from the fact that he was chosen to be one of the Primes by Primus himself, actually, who granted him the Matrix of Leadership. This would mean that Primus also acknowledged Optimus Prime as a very worthy character for not only gaining access to the Matrix, which basically proves that Primus acknowledged him as both a smart but also a very powerful character. So that's also another example of how he can prove his battlefield intelligence, or just intelligence in general. Not to mention, he was also one of the scientists working on Cybertron, and is actually a master of physics and astrophysics, unironically, as well as archaeology, as those were his fields of study back when he was still a scientist. But moving on to his hacks though, this is where it actually gets a little interesting. So the most important thing that we know about Prime is actually his Matrix of Leadership. Now, the Matrix of Leadership can erase your existence, if not conceptually erase your existence. We know this because the Matrix of Leadership repeatedly throughout multiple series and multiple verses has repeatedly either killed Unicron or conceptually erased him. This would mean that the Matrix of Leadership has the ability to erase your existence or conceptually erase your existence to those degrees, and that he can most specifically do this to evil, or anything that is considered evil. For example, Unicron, Megatron, even Death's Head, even before Death's Head became an Autobot, or at least an anti-hero to some degree, or just any evil character in general would be more or less susceptible to the Matrix of Leadership. So if you're arguing the Matrix of Leadership, be careful to be very specific on who you use it against, because the Matrix is very, very conditional. Because the Matrix, while it grants you precognition and also degrees of power increase, as well as other statistical increases, the Matrix is geared more towards to deal with evil, so make sure to keep that in mind. Another hack that Prime would also have would more or less be his computative state of being. Prime is a Cybertronian who's also composed of data, which would more or less mean that he'd have a computative brain. Cybertronians with computative brains can process things much faster than humans can, even faster than supercomputers ever could. So he does have his mind as a type of hack, you can argue as well. And another hack he has is, of course, his transformation, where he can transform into vehicles and move around. And by the way, travel time in Transformers is not at all relative to your combat speeds. This is shown because vehicles are slower to their destinations, whereas, say, characters, whenever they fight, they have more impressive combative speed feats. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. This is more of a brief overlook on Fall of Cybertron Prime. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm Nothing Important here, and I hope you guys have a good day. Ciao. See you later.
Falling in the blood, slipping through the cracks, falling to the depths, can I ever go back? Dreaming of the way it used to be.